Welcome to the Photoshop training channel. Today, we'll be looking at enhancing eyes in Photoshop. I'll be going through 9 different techniques that you can use to make anyone's eyes even more amazing than what they already are. The techniques I'm about to show you can all be used at once, but it's usually a good idea to only use 1 or 2 at a time to keep things more realistic and natural. It all depends on your image, the effect that you're trying to achieve, or your client's requirements. When it comes to retouching people, I don't like to take things into the extreme. I prefer a more subtle approach. But in this tutorial, I will have to take things into the extreme for 2 reasons. Number 1, it will be easier for you to see the adjustments if I make them more extreme. And number 2, I actually start most of my adjustments at extremes and then scale my way back to a more realistic and subtle look. I just find it a whole lot easier to work this way. But feel free to work in whatever manner works best for you. The goal of this tutorial is not to make eyes seem unrealistic or unnatural. All we're trying to do is remove distractions from the eyes and bring out the natural beauty in them. Having said that, at the end of the tutorial, I will teach you a great way to create cool multicolor eyes, which is a fun and great looking special effect. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean up some of the red veins in the woman's eye, in the white areas of the eye, in these areas here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the wheel on my mouse by holding Alt and scrolling in to zoom in, and that's option on the Mac, by the way. And I'm going to select my healing brush. Now that you have your tool selected, create a new layer, call it white, and make sure that your healing brush is set to all layers. That way you sample from all the layers. Find a clean area where there's no red or any blemishes or any distractions, like this area here. Hold Alt or Option on the Mac, and then start painting away those red veins. And you might have to click on it again, so. And I'm going to go fairly quickly here, so I might not get every single red vein or every single blemish. And by the way, if you make a mistake like I did here, there's a couple of things you can do. You can either hit Control Alt Z or Command Option Z to delete, or you can use the eraser tool and erase that, because what we're doing is creating all our changes in new layers. We're not destroying the background image, so her eye is still intact, and that's the way I like to work. I don't like to destroy my original image, and I think that's the way you should work. So I'm going to come back into my image, select the healing brush tool, hold Alt, and I'll try again. And I'll try to remove as many distractions as I can. I'm going to fix the eyelash here. This one is coming into the eye. I think it's a little bit distracting as well, so I'm going to remove that one. And like I said before, if you make a mistake, you can always erase it. Or another thing you can do is use your clone stamp tool, and you also have to set this to all layers, by the way. And you can decrease the size by clicking on the bracket as well. And you can use this tool to remove distractions as well. I'm going to switch back into my healing brush tool, since I'm going to use this tool for most of this tutorial. And I'm going to come here and just remove some of these. Notice that I'm clicking and dragging and holding Alt in different areas to try to match it. Try to match the eye a little bit better, like so. And so as you can see, it's already improving dramatically. I'm going to hold the space bar, click and drag so I can do the other eye. And I'm going to hold Alt in this area here. And if you can, you'll notice that I'm holding Alt or Option, clicking and dragging. So I'm holding Alt a lot. Just wanted to mention that. And maybe get rid of this eyelash there so it doesn't distract too much from the eye. And get rid of this big red vein this woman has here on the side. And again, I'm going faster than I normally would, just so I don't waste too much of your time. And we can get going with the actual iris of the eye, which is what everybody's most interested in, I'm sure. Okay. So this is before and this is after. It's looking much better. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to use the Smart Sharpen to sharpen the eyes a little bit. And the first thing we need to do is select our elliptical marquee tool and create an ellipse that is just the same size as the iris here, like so. Then hold Alt and Shift and notice that X that's right below the cursor as I hold Shift. You want to get that X, and what you're going to do after that is come and make a selection right above the eye there, following the shape of the eye, and then let go. And you're going to trim the top part out just to keep the iris selected. I'm going to do the same thing, holding Alt or Option, then Shift, then click and drag. And I'm going to use the space bar to move it around, and I'm still holding all the buttons on the keyboard, by the way. And let go. So now we just have the iris selected. After that, you can go into Select, Modify, Feather, and we'll feather this 2 pixels. Then press OK. And I'm going to select the background layer, and I'm going to press Control J. And what that does is that makes a duplicate of just that selection. Okay? So I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye, and I'm going to do it a little bit faster this time, just because you already know how to do it. So I'm going to make an ellipse, then I'm going to hold Alt and Shift to intersect the top part of the selection here and get rid of it, and I'll do the same thing for the bottom again. Option, Shift, and spacebar to move around, and then go to Select, Modified, Feather, 2 pixels as well, and press OK. Click on your background layer, press Control J, that's Command J on the Mac, and now we have that eye as well. I'm going to select both of these layers, press Control E or Command E on the keyboard. I'm just going to call this eyes. Actually, you know what? I'm going to call this sharpen, since that's what we're going to do. We're going to sharpen these eyes. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go into Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. And we can zoom in here if you want to, but I'm just going to use the preview here to see what's going on. And I'm going to move this here so you can see it better. Just so you can see that eye a little bit better. Actually, let me cancel, and I'll move the eye down here. Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. Okay, this is the eye here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the amount to add more. Maybe 225. The radius, I can probably bring that up a little bit. Maybe just 1 pixel. And the remove is always best at lens blur. And press OK when you're done. Now hold the space bar to move it around, clicking and dragging it. And this is after, and this is before. After. And actually, you might not get the full effect until you actually zoom out. And as you can see, this is before, and this is after. It might not be as clear in the video, but if you're following along, you can really see the difference. Okay, now we're going to add contrast to the eyes. So I'm going to press Control on the sharpen layer to select those eyes. And then I'm going to go into create a new adjustment layer and create a curves adjustment layer. And what I'm going to do is create an S curve like so to create more contrast. But I'm really going to do an extreme here. If I click and make an extremely if I take this S curve to the extreme, you see that the eyes get blown out and the colors are all bad. But if you change the blending mode to luminosity, you don't change the colors. You will only change the lights and darks. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to leave it at luminosity, but we're going to take a more subtle approach. Maybe something like this. Okay? And as I said in the beginning of the tutorial, we're taking it to the extremes, but once you're done, you can always use the opacity and bring it down to a more realistic look. But I'm going to leave everything set to 100% for now, just so you could really see it. Okay, I'm going to rename this layer to contrast. Okay, so this is the second technique, or actually the third if we include the white, which I'm going to put here at the bottom so we can keep it in order. So this is the third technique I've showed you so far. We're going to move on to the fourth. We're going to create a new layer, and we're going to rename it to Highlight shadow. Then we're going to double click on our foreground color, and in the brightness we're going to set that to 50% and press OK so we can get 50% gray. Hold Alt and backspace or Option backspace on the Mac to fill it with gray, and if we change the blending mode to soft light, it becomes transparent. So as you can see, if I shut off everything else, it's still there, but it's transparent. So what we're going to do now is go into our dodge and burn tools, and we can start creating shadows and highlights. So I'm going to first create some shadows. I'm going to hold Alt and use the wheel on the mouse to zoom in, and then I can start creating shadows. So now I have the exposure set to 50%, and that should be okay for this. And I'm just going to start creating some darkness in the areas that I think that it needs. So basically around the iris and at the top here, and inside the pupil. And then I'm going to make a really thin brush, and I'm just going to create lines that follow the lines that are already there, like so. And again, I'm going a little bit faster than I normally would, just so I can save a little bit more of your time. Okay, and then I'm going to switch over to the dodge tool, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create highlights where I think highlights need to go, maybe like in this area here, like so. And I'm going to do the same thing with the thin lines, like so. And by the way, I'm going to control click on the contrast mask, and I'm going to also apply it to the highlight shadow area, so I'm only affecting the iris here. Alright, so this is after and this is before. So as you can see, it's a pretty drastic change, and as I said before, you can always use the opacity to get a more subtle effect. And just so you can see what's going on, if I set this to normal, this is all I did. And if I set it to overlay, it creates those shadows and highlights. And I'm going to quickly do the same to the other eye. So I'm going to create those highlights using the dodge tool, like so. And maybe highlight here, like so. And now I'm going to create the shadows. Come around there, around here. Maybe some at the bottom, and definitely some at the top, like so. The pupil here. And create those lines going into the eyes, like so. Okay, I didn't do as good of a job as the other one, but you get the idea. So, and it does look a little bit better, even though I didn't spend too much time on there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to call this layer brightness. This is just to brighten up the eye a little bit. And I'm going to use my brush tool. I'm going to set my foreground color to white. And I'm just going to paint under the eye like that. And you know what? That might actually be a little too big. So let me get a smaller brush and make it softer even. Actually, about maybe, yeah, this should be a good size. Just about the size we had it before. I'm going to use the press the V key and use the arrow tools to move that to the side a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is set that to overlay. And it creates this brightness right under the eye. And you can bring that down, of course. Actually, I am going to leave this one at 50% because the 100% setting is just way too much. So what I'm going to do is actually zoom out just so you can see what it looks like with that brightness under the eye and without it. And if I bring that to 50%, you can see it's a much more subtle effect and it's a little bit better. So I'm going to hold Alt, drag that over to the other eye. That's Option on the Mac. And by the way, you have to have your Move tool selected and holding Alt and dragging the layer will duplicate it, and that's Option on the Mac. And I can just select both layers, press Ctrl G, and rename this group brightness. Okay, now we're going to move on to our sixth effect, and that is changing the color of the eyes. And there's different ways of doing it. The first way I'm going to show you is by using the hue and saturation adjustment layer, but I'm going to click on this layer mask to select the eyes, click on the adjustment layer icon, and select hue and saturation. Then click on colorize, which colorizes the eyes, and you can use the hue slider here to change it to any color that you like. And what I'm going to do is set the hue to somewhere around 26, 20, 28. 28 seems fine. And then I'm going to change the saturation to about 50. And the lightness, I'm going to bring that down to somewhere around here, somewhere around -28. And with this one, I am going to have to change the opacity right now since 100% is just way too brown. So maybe somewhere along 65% or so. And I'm going to call this layer brown eyes. So this is one way of changing the color of the eyes. Another way of changing the color of the eyes is by creating a curves layer. I'm going to select my brown eyes mask and add a curves adjustment layer. And I'm just going to shut this eye off so we can work with the original colors. And you can change the color of the eyes by changing the individual channels. So if I wanted to make blue eyes, I can change the channels. Until I get them to be blue here, maybe something like that. And it takes a little bit of playing around with, but once you make those adjustments, you get blue eyes. And one way I like about using the curves adjustment layer is that you get other colors, not just blue, and sometimes that can be a little more realistic than just using the brown color, eyes on the hue saturation layer. So as you can see, those are the brown eyes, and these are the blue eyes. And you can see the channels here, how if it's set to RGB, you can see how all the channels are affecting the image. So if I come into blue, you see the blue there, which is up here in the RGB. I can do the same thing for the green and for the red. And actually, you know what, if I just wanted to adjust it just a little more, I just wanted them to be a little bit more blue, and of course you can use your opacity to bring down the intensity of this effect. And I'm just going to call this layer blue eyes. Okay guys, that was the 7th technique to enhancing your eyes. Now we got 2 more, and this one is a really cool one. I'm going to control click on the adjustment layer, that's command click, to select the visible pixels on the mask. But this time I'm going to select the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to hold Alt so I can get that minus under the cursor there. And I'm just going to do one eye at a time this time. So I'm going to start with the left eye, and then I'm going to go into gradient to create a gradient fill adjustment layer, and I'm going to select this rainbow fill. Then I'm going to change the style to angle, and I'm going to press OK. Then I can set this layer to color, and now we have a multicolor eye effect. And of course you can bring the intensity in or out if you want to. And this is a good way of creating multicolor eyes. And if you want to apply the same effect to the other layer, we'll just hit Control, and this time we'll delete the other side, and we can press Control J to duplicate the layer, and we'll fill it with white. And actually we have to delete this side, so with the layer mask selected, we fill that side with black. So now this layer controls one eye and this layer controls the other. I can hold Shift and select the layer at the bottom, press Control G, that's Command G in the Mac, and we can call this rainbow eyes. So that's a pretty neat effect there, and you can use the adjustment layer of the group to change how hard that effect is applied to the original image. I'm gonna shut that off for now, and I'm just gonna keep the original eyes there for the next step. Okay guys, so our 9th and final effect is enhancing the highlight in the pupil here. So this one's actually okay, it's not bad, but sometimes you might want to add a highlight in the eye, like this highlight here. I'm going to press V on the keyboard just so I can select the move tool. And I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to call this Pupil Highlight. Then I'm going to select a magenta color. I'm going to press B on my keyboard to get my brush tool. And I'm going to create my highlight by starting with magenta, like so. And the reason I'm doing that, and I'm doing it right above the other highlights so you can see, and the reason I'm doing that is because if you zoom in, the highlights are not usually just white. They have other colors in them. In this case, magenta and blue. So I want to create that realistic highlight effect by having that extra color, not just white. Then I'm going to click on my brush tool again, set my foreground to white, and then I'm going to double click on here to create my highlight, like so. And I'm just going to press the V key and move that over to the other highlight, just because I wanted a bigger highlight. Zoom out, hold Alt again, that's Option on the Mac, click and drag to duplicate that highlight and put it right above the other eye, like so. So now we have our two pupil highlights. And by the way, I put that into a group and called it Pupil Highlight, like so. Okay, so now that we have all our effects, I'm going to select the top one and select the bottom layer that we called white. Press Ctrl G. And we'll just call this group Eye Effects. So this is before, this is after. And now that we have all our effects in one group, we can just bring that down so it looks a little bit more realistic. And I did the entire group there, but it's actually better if you just do one layer at a time. And as I said when we started the tutorial, you're probably not going to use all of these 9 techniques all at once in one single image. So you probably only have 1 or 2 layers that you have to worry about. So those were the 9 techniques I wanted to show you to enhance eyes. And I'm going to do one other thing, and this is going to be a freebie. This is going to be the 10th technique, and it's not necessarily to enhance the eyes. It's more of a way to emphasize the eyes, not necessarily enhance them. So I'm going to, with any layer selected, in this case the group, I'm going to hold Control Shift Alt E. That's Command Option Shift E on the Mac. And what that does is it creates a duplicate of all the visible layers, like so. So this is just a layer with all the effects applied to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Filter, Lens Correction. I'm going to click on the Custom tab, and I'm going to add a vignette. And I'm just going to go to -100%. And I can darken this up just a little more, like so, and press OK. And now we have a vignette around the eyes. So this is before and this is after. And that's just to emphasize the eyes. That's not necessarily enhancing them, we're just emphasizing them. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments, head over to my Facebook page and you can leave them there. I actually get a lot of private messages and messages on my wall about the tutorials that I do. So don't be shy, and if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them there. I'm also doing a Photoshop tip of the day, so if you're a fan of my Facebook page, you probably have been seeing those. I've been getting a really good response on them. I've been getting a lot of likes and comments on each and every one of them, so I would like to thank you guys for that. If you're not a fan of my page and you want to see those tips of the day, then just go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Photoshop Training Channel, and click the like button. So I guess that's it for this tutorial, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something new. For more free Photoshop tutorials, head over to my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, and feel free to share your results using this tutorial, either at my site or my Facebook page. And as I said before, feel free to leave any comments or questions you may have. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys again next time.